So, with great intentionalities provided in a thing, like uh, uh, in the form of absolute quality of the setting and design and other capabilities of the sword, how can it exist without an intent to be alive, to express itself? How can it remain useless and end up in nothingness? Like in the case of the so-called central nervous system and the greatest powers given to it by the creator of the so-called human being, how can that entity end up useless? That is why the concept of Sratham and other activities for the so-called departed, sad psyche of the people. That is the logic behind it. Anyway, that's a different story. With all the intentionalities of the movement of the hands, with all the intentionalities with the movement of the engines of the intellect, I mean, power of observation, power of attention, power of thinking, power of conceptualization, power of reflection, power of good thinking, power of action, power of etc., etc., etc. What the sword, the overall sword of the human being doing? That is a side question. I am just giving us an example for you to consider. Our topic is not that. So now it was the intent of that particular sword which worked by indirectly inducing a desire in the mind of a master. This cook was nevertheless a master. Master in doing the Japanese Zen meditation of Sano Yu. How can a person with no samurai element in his intentionality? Now look at the intentionality of the cook. His intentionality does not carry an element of using a sword, of the mindset of a samurai. See, if if he belonged to the samurai community and he chose the activity of Shanoyu, which anybody can, and then it is okay. He just does not have the intentionality, lineage, or heredity of anything connected with the activity of a samurai. So that particular intent of the sword becomes an invariant force, like a terrible wind, like the low pressure originates in the atmosphere by varied reasons. So that invariant force is generally working.
Sir, can a sword have an intent?
Why not? If a chair has an intent, that is the concept of intent. It is our human logic. Every item in the world is a live particle. It has an intent. Yes. That is, if that sword was alive, it would have done that cutting. That intent is a concept which we are discussing, Anuradha. I told you intent and intentionality are concepts in the philosophy of phenomenology. And after Franz Brendan are talking about it, nobody has taken it up. Because the modern mechanical, scientific, technological worldview just cannot accept that things have intents or intentionality. Intent and intentionality are properties of the so-called human beings only. But things can have intent and intentionalities. Those who engage with things at that level only can realize it. It is not under the, we are talking about genius levels. At genius levels, for a genius human being, he or she can really feel the life of things and phenomena around. Forget about phenomena. It may look alive, like the rains and the wind may look alive because it is moving. You can definitely the sword has an intent. Definitely every object can have an intent. I have experienced it. Every one of you can experience it. Because unless you have that level of sensitivity, you cannot feel the intent of an object. People cannot feel even the told dialogues of other people. We are not talking about that. We are not talking about the normal distribution of the population. We are talking about that 0.003. It is not 0.03, 0.003% of genius level perception, Anuradha. So for example, the fingers have intent to play on the tabla. That intent is with that mind by which that fingers are playing tabla. In which case, why every finger is not playing tabla? So if you love something, then you will know whether that thing has got some intent. And just test it, test it, test it. Those who believe, that's the principle of belief. Some people believe that Guru Ayappan or Krishna or Shiva or Kali or Bhadra, whoever, they will do. If their belief is absolutely uncorrupt, that stone piece will do. That's why they all have come into existence. But the majority of people are just imitating what the other people are doing. The original one who conceptualized a piece of stone in a certain shape, having the power of the deity, it really has. Everything in this universe is alive. Life is not in the flesh and blood alone. Okay? Anyway, that is your choice. So you have to have that choice. That's how that's how you get elevated to a different level of perception of the world. So now you see that how that invariant, that intent of the sword transferred to it by the craftsman, by the creator of that sword. Or let at least take it as a metaphorical case study. We can do a similar case study with the very sword sitting there right now. Then you will have to agree whether there is intent or intentionality for you. Alright? So, this is now done in a metaphorical sense after all. Much more comfortable. If your attention is focused on to the you, the sword right now sitting there in the male and female format, and if you look at the invariant possibility that there was a so-called creator behind the formation of the you, what was the intent of that creator? Was that intent of the creator a corrupt one, a low quality one, a mediocre one? Which created a useless sword or a incompetent sword or something like that? Why that human sword is feeling depressed and worried and dull just because of transient variations of dialogues and events in the environment? Can be easily remote controlled by anybody and everybody around? Was that the intent of the creator when, or creative activity or creative force, without which nothing can be created? Nothing is possible without an invariant and a creating force. No doubt about that. Who was the creator of you? What was the creator? Not who, what? What was the creator of the sword? That is you. Okay, let's go into that. Was it a moment of orgasmic expectation on the part of the man? A sexual feeling of the woman? What was that? What was the origin point? Is it a philosophy? Or is it a truth? Or is it that some people, some agents are doing something here, the you independently was dropped in from the vacuum, nothingness, disconnected with this activity? You can know the intent of a sword because you can investigate it, inspect it. How do you know the intent and intentionalities of the various swords inside you? Are the raw iron or raw intellects of you been shaped into the its full power? Who has to do it? Who will do it? That is not the mistake here, perhaps. Anyway, there's a given entity with the responsibility or with the possibility to develop invariance of intents or to develop intents. Is there an intent operating in you? Are there intents operating in you? Are those intents correlated with the intentionalities of you? What all intentionalities are shaped inside you? Or if you use the metaphor of a sword, what all swords, how many swords, what all swords are shaped and polished and sharpened inside the you? These kind of questions will be asked. That's why we don't discuss directly about the you. Perfect clarity of reflection, reflective analysis. Because anyway, it's all after all a genius choice. Even without that, all of you can comfortably live and survive in this world and face life. No doubt about that. That's why we call it a genius choice. And that's probable possible with everything in this world. There are millions of trees. Some trees happen to be taken care of by somebody. There are millions of pen. There are millions of vehicles. And similarly, there are millions of human beings. Some human beings happen to uh, become inspired about extraordinary intents. I mean, go and check whether that cow is eating the thing. Ask him to be careful. You know, you have to be much more daring, much more fierce, much more aggressive to attack uh, uh, the intents in you. If you want to interrogate somebody, you have to interrogate you. So that sword silently existing there was remote controlling. A master cook got inspired to learn the art of or develop the intentionality of swordplay. And when he wanted to really try it out, he just went and took that particular sword. And that is uh, all the possibility that he never got defeated in any of the attempts of his testing. Perhaps it is possible that the intent of the emperor, because that sword was made for the emperor. Emperor is the top. That's why perhaps he uh, ended up challenging the top, like Shogun. See, he did not know that she was challenging Shogun. because even he had heard about him. He got a shock of his life when he heard that the audience was shouting, who is this guy challenging Shogun? See, do not take all these things as simple, my dear friends. Because you have joined this program knowingly or unknowingly, your destinies have changed. I am sorry. You may not have thought about it this much. And I have told you the fundamental formula like A plus B the whole squared. Your level of preparation will determine your path of life, no doubt. I am absolutely clear that within a maximum range of 5 years, your life will take a totally unexpected range of turns. No doubt about that. Because of the simple observation that the level of preparation will decide the path of existence. That's all, very simple. That was the level of preparation for that particular sword. Get the point, Minashi? Yeah. The way of the making of that sword carried such a force of intent and intentionality, such a perfect configuration of intentionality of experience of the sword craftsman and the intent of making it for the emperor of the country. And how can it remain without action? Like as I told you, if you are competent in something, like yesterday I asked, I was mentioning, if you are competent in something, how can you sit idle? Impossible. You will feel, I don't know, you may become absolutely troubled. So, because of the intent of that sword only, this guy, when he wanted to establish himself as a samurai, the very shogun happened to be there. That sword, though it never had to fight with the sword of the shogun, that's the swordsman, the one who was carrying the sword, finally ended up challenging the greatest samurai of the land. Understand the parable? It is at the same time you are doing a creative analytic understanding of the parable. I am trying a network of understanding happening to you at the same time, a very a linkage in networking of understanding. You have to look at it from the sense of the parabolic analysis, developing creative analytic perception of a parable or a document. At the same time, understanding some of the invariant principles of existence and activities. You are also existing at the center of a network of linkages and variants and intentionalities. You are not aware of that. You have to become aware of that. At any point of time, you are located at the center of influential linkages of several variants and perhaps invariants having its own linkages here and there. When you understand that, you become a mystic. When you see that, you will see that seeing is called so called. You will see that means the light. You will see that means you use the word. There is a different light because normally seeing happens in light. Therefore, the concept of enlightenment. And now, for example, at this point, I remember what Parvati said. What that because it was the intent of a master craftsman, it saved the owner also, right, Parvati? Of course. Because that you have to look at some other indirect linkages. Okay, by the intent, this poor guy happened to take it. Of course, he was he became very competent. He defeated many other samurais in 3, 4 instances. Then he took the linkage of becoming a samurai, and he went to a place and he happened to challenge Shogun. So on one side, the intent is fulfilled. And carrying such a powerful sword, he must only win. And he cannot win. Because whatever be the power of intentionality, he is not mature. He cannot, whatever be his intentionality, even if he is a super samurai, he cannot reach the level of Shogun. Because Shogun is a super master by the age, almost double the age of the samurai. So the intent or the intentionality of Shogun just cannot allow Shogun to be defeated by anybody. But someone has come with the master sword, supermost sword, and because he is carrying that kind of a sword with that kind of an intent, so he will not end up in defeat by some other linkages with the master samurai, I mean his own master, which he suggests the act of cooking a cup of tea, which has its own different linkages. See, so many multiple dimensions of variant invariant linkage network is operating in that parable. It is so beautiful. And therefore he was saved. And sword also achieved its fulfillment by taking a role in the act of challenging the greatest shogun, I mean master, on one side, and on the other side, the sword holder, I mean the man who carried that sword was saved or salvaged by the linkage of the master samurai, by the linkage of his idea of cooking a cup of tea, and by the linkage of the way of cooking of the tea and its influential linkages in the mind of the shogun. See those minutest moments. That is called creative analytic perception. That is called a real referent reality perception. And that is the case with all so-called sciences also. Chemistry, analyzing everything into its finest chemical molecule, blah, blah, whatever. Physics, biology, botany, anthropology, management, all these are, who created all of them? You look at them. Don't look at the university students and professors. Look at those geniuses who did research on. They were trying to do that, okay? You have to see them. They were trying to see the truth and the truth and the truth at the most deepest level of linkages. We are trying to be at that level, not at a studio sitting there and mugging up a few part of the subject matter. No, not at all. Your area of interest is existence of the you, and to understand the existence of somebody else as soon as he comes before you. With a partial interest that you will become a guide and a mentor or a philosopher or a friend, so that people will come to you for their critical solutions. Because you have to do it. Because that is the intentionality of the you. That is the intentionality carried in the sword, linkaged with the intent. Because the intentionality of the sword is to be used, to cut. And that can happen only by the intent. Sword cannot operate that intent, though it has the intent. It has to be placed. The crystal ball has the intent to roll, but it cannot roll unless it is kept on a plate. The explosive has the intent, and it will not work to kill somebody unless a bullet is placed in front and unless that explosive is excited to uh, uh, to what do you call, to expand. Similarly, the intentionality of the explosives inside you, that is to be inspired, that is to be fired. That's what we are doing now. If a pen is purchased and if it is never used, its existence is meaningless. Similarly, if you have so much of sharpened competencies, do not retain it that you will do only for the job. That's what the great majority of people are doing in this world. They develop all the competencies to do the precise job, to get the salary, and do whatever they want. Okay, do it. But do it with this angle of intent. You are contributing the sword of your competencies. You are fulfilling the intent of your competencies, which every bird, every tree is doing. They do not take anything. They take some little bit of water and air, and they make the flowers and the seeds and contributing to the world. What is your contribution to the world? I mean, the world around you. Of course, you are feeding your child. You are taking care of your husband or wife. Okay. That almost everybody is doing. Not because of their intent, because of the intents injected into them by the traditions and the cultures of a society. That's all. It is not out of their genuine intent that they take care of their husbands or wives or children. It's all conditioned responses. That's all. It is not by any clear intent. Like Parvati asked, even with your clear intent, you will be doing the same job. But definitely there will be, every job that you do will have a life of its own, like the life of the sword. The sword becomes a live entity. Like my jeep in my hands is a live entity. I am so sure that it would never put me into danger. I have never taken an insurance for that. Do you know? I have never taken an accident insurance. Because I am very sure. Third party insurance is compulsory, legally compulsory. Therefore, I take it. And I am not a ordinary driver. An accident can happen even to extraordinary drivers also, because if somebody else coming into your way, you just cannot do anything. Even that cannot happen to my Jeep, because my intent is tuned with that Jeep as a live object. That's the way my attention is focusing on it. I have no doubt about that. And I realized that many others are also there who look at their weapons or their vehicles in the same way. And they also say the same thing. So do not be a victim of ordinary logic at all. It is your choice. It is your attention. The scale of observation creates the phenomenon. Scale of observation meaning the scale of your attention. The scale of the power of your intent. When you say that you will succeed, it will happen. So Anirudh has a doubt whether the sword can have intent. The same way, when you tell somebody, you bless somebody that you will definitely succeed, and if it happens, in what is the logic about it? There is no logic. You just say that this will happen for you, it will happen. What is the logic? Doubtlessly, I told Meera that an elephant will come today. And I also told her that elephants are not here nowadays. That's what people say. Right now, Meenakshi is sitting there. A week before her trip to Madurai Meenakshi temple, I told her something extraordinary, non-ordinary, not extraordinary. Extraordinary meaning something extraordinary, something non-ordinary. That means which is unlikely to happen. Will happen there. It was not a chance. It may, it will. And the most non-ordinary thing that can happen in the campus of a temple at 10 o'clock in the morning happened there. I say this not to talk about me, but to sell somehow the idea to you, because you are all of varied ages and experiences. I'm making a statistical mean of talking so that because there is a strong logical trap, quite possibly by living in this world, by being educated in very ordinary subjects and learning it and mugging it up or reinforcing it into the system has lost its original intentionality and the power of intent. Do not underestimate that. Evidenced by the fact that not even a single sensible creation has happened from out of the legions of educated people in the world history. Why? So belong just to have that certificate with you, that's all. But approach your work as an original self. Don't worry, you will not forget anyway whatever you have learned. A lot of people I have seen, they are worried about detaching because they worry that whatever they learned may get forgotten. No. Anyway, for the work of Parvati or Aniratha or um, the learned subjects may not be required at all. But understand this. So do this rigorous analysis of the parable of the you. Do a clear violin analysis of the parable of the you. And please believe that the you existentially is not at all different from whatever is described in that parable. After 100 years, your trace will not be here, okay? If that is the truth, why don't you look at that yourself as a parable? Look at your intentionalities and your intents. What kind of invisible things are guiding you? So, I hope you have understood somewhat the uh, engine of violin, invariant, variant linkages, how variants get linkage to other variants by its intents and intentionalities, in what all different orbits those linkages get connected to. As of now, and on the other side, by what all invariant forces that assembled certain variants at a historical point of time that led to the conception of that uh, what you call that fertilized egg that you were once upon a time very clearly. To that delivered infant on one day, into the monastery of this world. What all variations have happened to that infant? What all variants that infant got linkaged to? What all variants of events and episodes and experiences or whatsoever that building of several orbits of variance so that you are there right now. By doing that, you will get that gap, you will get that sufficient detachment. You will be able to see that invariant which is guiding you, which is there, not guiding you, which is there. So whenever you get time and mood, take a huge paper or reserve several papers of a book, and as much as you understand invariant, variant, linkage, intentionality, orbit, network of the phenomenon that you is, do it. If possible, identify as many variants as possible in as many orbits as possible, historically, and existing now also. It will be, after doing that, you will know the consequences of that. Okay, one simple question is violin somewhat clear to you all?
Yes.
Yeah, that's all.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Apply that. Sitting somewhere in a fine moment of mood, apply that to the very you. And wonders are possible. And try for wonders. Just be wonderful. Just be a magician. Just like that. Like the Mount Everest is there, just like that, climb it. You will feel good about you. Don't bother about whether you get an award, whether your photo. What happened to what you call Edmund Hillary if his photograph appeared in all the newspapers in the world? Right now we are talking about him. Ultimately, it was for his feeling and his feeling only. That's all. That is the fulfillment of the intent of his existence. Every day, focus your attention to have mysterious, magical intents to take over you for the benefit of the people around you, people who will come to you. All right, Ashwati, Parvati, Anuradha, Meenakshi, Ramesh, Mantra, Rishika. All right, bye bye.
Thank you, Master.
Bye.
Thank you,
All right,
sir.
okay.
Bye.
All right,
Bye.
okay, bye bye.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Bye bye.
Bye.